Hey guys, welcome. Want to chat with you about my first job I ever had, making $5.25 an hour. I was around 16 at the time, and it was my first job. I was in high school, and I was making bagels. That was my first job. I'm an immigrant. I was born in Pakistan. I came to the United States in 1989, and it was a difficult life for us growing up. My family didn't come from money. We didn't come from wealth. I wasn't born into a rich family. Everything I earned it myself through hard work, dedication, blood, sweat, and tears. So the first job I had, a friend of mine got it for me. Good friend of mine, I think his name was Billy. Went to high school together. I had a 1997 Mitsubishi Mirage, and I think that was my first car. And I had to get to work every day. Believe I had a learner's permit. And what I did was I had this car and I had to pay for gas for the car, but I didn't have enough money for gas. So I had to get a job to pay for the gas for the car so I could drive around. And back then I had the learner's permit and then it converted to a license. And so this job, I'll tell you what it was. It was on Rockville Pike in Maryland, and it was $5.25 an hour. I believe it was in mid 2000. I was back in high school that time. So I'd show up to work on the weekends. It was a weekend job. It was Saturday and Sundays because I was in school Monday through Friday. So on Saturday and Sunday, I had to get up early to open the store at 5 or 6 a.m. It used to be called Manhattan Bagel on Rockville Pike, if anybody ever went there. And I woke up in the morning, I got in the car, I drove there. It wasn't very far from where I lived. It was probably maybe 2 or 3 miles. I was living in Rockville area, Bethesda. I'd get to work. We would get the bagels out of the big oven. We'd start prepping the counter. I'd go into the counter line that had all the vegetables, kind of like imagine like a Subway line, all the fruits and vegetables. So first job, I was working in the food retail industry. And yeah, I was a young guy at the time, and it taught me hard work, dedication, what it takes to work hard. It was kind of manual labor type job. And again, first job I ever had, $5.25 an hour. So very different life I have now, but I really truly started from the bottom. And I had to do everything in that bagel store. I had to work the cash register. I had to prep the food. Sometimes I would grill the food and make it myself. I used to make egg bagels. I put egg on top of the bagel, put cheese. I would cook on the grill. I operated the cash register. Occasionally we had to clean the bathrooms. So I'm humble. I had to clean the bathrooms. I did whatever my boss asked me to do. So that it was a kind of a tough job because you'd be up early in the morning, 6 a.m. A lot of my friends on the weekends were just kind of relaxing, playing video games, having fun. I was working hard. So I worked 6 a.m. until around probably 4 or 5 p.m. I think. I can't remember. I think it was around 5 or 6 p.m. And there would be a breakfast rush at 8 in the morning. Everyone would come to get their bagels. I think it was the swim team from Walter Johnson High School. We'd feed them. Then there'd be a lunch break and a huge lunch rush. And then we have a little bit of a break. And then after that, we had the dinner time, which was later in the evening. So people would come for a late lunch. And it was busy. I mean, most of the time I was saying, "Hi, welcome to Manhattan Bagel. How can I help you? What can we do to serve you?" And I would go into our script. Would you like lox and cream cheese? Would you like a pizza bagel? What type of bagel? And personally, I had a lot of the bagels myself. Looking back, reflecting now that I'm fully vegan, plant-based diet, those bagels had a little bit of cholesterol on them. And some of the foods I was eating wasn't very healthy, especially all that cheese on the pizza bagels. So, that was my first job. I was working at Manhattan Bagel. The owner at the time, I believe his name was Lee. Eventually, he bought out the bagel place and he turned it to Itzy's Bagel, which I think became his own type of shop. So I worked directly underneath the business owner, and I learned, how do you run a business, a store yourself? He had a restaurant in the middle of Rockville Pike. It was a great location. How do you provide value to your customers? How do you help people with their needs and wants, what they need? You're providing a service, customer service, and food is a very big industry in this country. People love eating, and this ties into place with what I'm doing with the vegan plant-based diet. There were vegan options. You could have alfalfa sprouts, you could have broccoli sprouts on the bagel, you could do it on a whole wheat bread instead. So I learned a lot. The cream cheese probably wasn't very good for me early on, but I didn't discover I had heart disease till way later in my life. But yeah, that's my first job. $5.25 an hour. It was a tough, grueling job. And again, I was already awake Monday through Friday to get to class at 6 a.m., 7 a.m. in high school. And then on the weekends, there's no breaks. So I remember I did that for quite some time, maybe an entire summer, maybe up to a year. Welcome back, guys. Let's talk about the second job I ever had in my life, valet driver. I used to park cars, and it was a fun job. I had that job for a very long time. So I believe my base pay was still pretty low. I think it was $8 or something, or $7.25 an hour, or $8.25 an hour is one of those two. But the way I got the job was a friend of mine in high school. I won't mention his name, but his dad was running a very large parking business called Mark Park Valet. It was a great company. I had a lot of fun working there, and I learned a lot. So it was called Mark Park Valet, and I was right after the job I had at the bagel place. I started doing the valet job, and I needed extra cash. I needed money. I had my second car. The first car I had was a 1997 Mitsubishi Mirage. It was tan, ugly, roll-up windows. Transmission didn't really work. The transmission broke after a while. My second car was a hand-me-down car from my older sister, and that was, I believe, 2003 or 2006 Chrysler Sebring. It was the coupe. It was back when Chrysler was back in the business. That's how old it was, and I love that car. That was a nice car. It was a cool two-door car. Always got pulled over though for some reason. Not sure why, but I had my second car. And again, hand-me-down car for my older sister. I think she got a Jeep or Explorer or something like that when she moved to New York to go to college. And I got handed down her car, so it was a hand-me-down car. So the second job I had was valet, parking cars for a living, driving, parking cars, living off the tips. So it just shows you, where I started from the bottom and I rose up. So anyone can do it. I wasn't born into wealth. I didn't have money. I didn't have connections. My parents weren't rich. I started from the bottom. So, and again, I'm an immigrant coming from a different country, and I had to rise up. So let's go over some of the things I learned with that job. It was honestly a fun job. My friend got me the job. We were parking cars. It was the reason it was fun. It's because we were working at such cool locations in Washington, D.C., and I got really good at parking cars, parallel parking cars. I mean, my parking skills, I think, are pretty good. And we worked at some of the embassies in DC, the Italian embassy. That was a fun embassy I worked at. The British embassy. All these embassies are in the Washington, DC area. And we kept getting events where people are coming for some event and valet. The funnest embassy I ever worked at was the Italian embassy, because at the time they had like Italian models or some type of event going on for dress designers. And I remember meeting all these amazing people coming from Italy, parking their cars. Some of the vehicles I was driving very early in my teenage. I think I was 19, 20, maybe 18 at the time, driving these cars. It was my first taste of driving really nice cars and looking at what the rich and wealthy are driving. Ferraris, Maseratis, really nice Mercedes, AMGs, had some very nice BMWs. I remember we did a private house event for the Baltimore Ravens. Some of the Ravens were there. I was driving their Bentleys and some of the stuff. And no, I didn't crash anyone's car. I never had an accident ever. Was a very safe driver. It was such an amazing experience. I was so young at the time. And what was I being exposed to? I was being exposed to the upper class. I would say bottom class at the time. I wasn't even thinking I was in a class at all. I was broke. I had no money ever. I probably always had maybe $10, $50 in my checking account, sometimes $200. Probably the biggest check I got from my jobs in my teen was $400 or $500 bi-weekly paycheck. It wasn't a lot when you're making a base hourly pay of $7 an hour. Don't think they even allow that anymore in 2025. I think the base in Maryland, Virginia is 15 or 10 or something like that. So, but back then I was making 7 and I was living on the tips. So I learned customer service very early on, how to be polite, how to say hello. Whenever I saw a customer coming up to retrieve their car, I said, "Hello, sir, how's it going? How was the event? Did you have a great time inside?" And they would say, "Oh yeah," we would chit chat. So a lot of my social skills were developed, in that job, talking to customers, people, because I knew if I was happy, had a smile on my face, they'd give me a bigger tip. And as soon as I got their car keys, I would run right away. I wouldn't walk to get their car. I was running top speed. And I had these really loud shoes on that made really loud noise. So when I ran, you could hear on the pavement like a loud banging. And the customer would watch like, wow, that guy's going above and beyond his job. So if you don't have a lot of money and you're struggling right now and you're one of these dead-end jobs, quote unquote, they're not dead-end jobs. They are a means to the end. They're a stepping stone to get you to the next thing. So don't give up. Keep pursuing, keep going. Look what I did. I didn't give up. And one thing you can control that my mentor Bob Proctor would tell me is attitude. You have to have a good attitude. I always smiled. I was always happy, even on the rough days when I was tired. I didn't have any money in my account. Attitude. Every day I showed up to work, I had a good attitude. Good things happened to me. I kept manifesting good things. And I also had a vision board, just like I have on here. I want to be a public speaker one day. I want to be holding the mic. I was thinking that when I was just 19, 18 years old as a teenager, hoping for my dreams. So if you're watching this and you're young and you're aspiring to be great, don't give up. Don't give up on your dreams. Really believe in yourself. You can really do it. And always keep the image in your mind of what you want to accomplish. You can accomplish anything if you think it and you can see it in your mind. You'll hold it in your hand. My mentor, Bob Proctor, used to tell me. So going back to this story, I would run, get their car, I would pull up, I'd have a little music playing, I'd have the AC on or heater, get out, and I would stand, very, very appropriately. I had my valet driver suit on, my uniform, and then they would come and say, "Thank you so much." And I'd say, "Hey, I hope you have a great night, get home safely. Next time, please use our service, Monk Park Valet, if you ever have an event." And I would give them the card. It was very professional. And they would tip me $5, $10. Some of the more successful people, $20. Biggest tip I probably ever got was probably a $100 bill. And I think that was at some big event. I think the Museum in DC, we were also doing some of the big buildings down there in DC. And I remember he'd give me $100, like, "Here you go, take care of yourself, kid, and make sure you split this with your other drivers." And that's what we would do. Sometimes we would pool our tips together at big events and we'd split it up amongst us. Maybe we had 10, 20, 30 valets. At more private events that we had at smaller houses or houses out in Potomac or West Virginia, there'd only be a few of us. And very quickly, I rose the ranks from just beginner valet driver to eventually running my own crew. I had my own team. So, and I was young at like 19, 20, maybe up to 23. I probably worked at this job. I think I worked valet from 19 to 23 on and off part-time on the weekends. So I always had a part-time job. I was always working. I didn't have weekends where I could just, have a great time and have fun. Some of my other friends were going on vacations. I was working. I was an immigrant. Family are immigrants here in this country. We were working, and whatever we could do to make money and survive, we were doing. And I was working at a very young age. So on the weekends, I would work and I would look forward to the money. I was happy. I was making money. I'm having fun. Some of my friends were working with me at the time. So all of us were, there together. It's fun if you get to work with your friends. If you have a job like you're a lifeguard or you're working at a restaurant and your friends are with you, it's a little bit more fun. So look into your network. See what your friends are doing. See if you could work with a friend. It's always more fun to be working with a friend or coworker, and stay in touch with them throughout their lives, because you never know. They might get a nice career job and end up working at a big company and pull you in one day. So connections and friendships are everything. Relationships is everything in life. That's how I got to where I am. Relationships, mentors, and teams. So to go back to the valet job, I remember probably the nicest car I ever drove was I think it was some like older Ferrari or something like that, and I only had to drive it up to the parking in front of the event to the parking spot. So that exposure of feeling what it felt like to have like a rich life when I was so financially struggling in my life, it really left a really big impression on me. One day I want to drive a car like that. One day I want a nice car. I want to be able to live a nice life and have a beautiful person on my arm going to an event and have a great relationship or have my family with me. So, those moments really stuck with me in my mind as I grew older in my 20s and then up in my 30s, thinking, what did I want in my life? So those jobs that I had in the beginning, especially the valet job, really instilled in me, if I do hard work and I grind it out, you could have success. But the attitude was really important. So I'm grateful for the job I had. I worked very hard to get to where I am. I'm very grateful that I had that job, valet. And when I got into University of Maryland, I was still doing that job on the weekend, studying engineering. And I was very grateful for that. Eventually, when I landed my first job, my first career job, it was a different story. But those were my first few jobs I had. I had a few more odd jobs here and there, but I think those two were really the ones to get my career started when I was a young guy. Working at Manhattan Bagel as a basically bagel boy, and then valet driver for let's say almost 10 years, maybe 8 or 10 years on and off. So very grateful for those jobs. And I believe my friend's dad that was running the company, he ended up selling Mark Park Valet to Impark. Once again, working for another business owner, kind of helping them with what their dreams are. So, and I totally believe in getting a job, working hard and working your way up, and hopefully end up, if you want to do a business, some people are meant for businesses and some people aren't. But I wholeheartedly believe in working hard and working a job and doing a good job and taking it step by step to success. Success takes time and success leaves clues. So keep following my channel and stay tuned for the next episode we have about my first corporate jobs I had. Hey guys, welcome back. I want to talk about the college I attended, what I learned going to college, whether I thought it was necessary or I thought it was a waste of time. So let's dive deep into it. I attended Walter Johnson High School in Bethesda, Maryland. I graduated in 2007. I was a pretty good student. I wouldn't say I was an A+ student, but pretty good student. I had pretty good grades. I had a relatively high GPA, between 3 and 4 GPA. And I applied to many schools. I applied, since I was a Maryland resident, I wanted to apply in-state so I could get in-state tuition. I got into UMBC, University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and then University of Maryland, College Park, which was an excellent school, and I loved Maryland. I loved the University of Maryland. I fully endorsed them. I had a great experience. I'm a Terp for life. Go Terps. And I'll talk to you about my experience. So after graduating high school, I knew I wanted to go to college. There was no question in my family. Again, we were immigrants. We came from a different country, from Pakistan, and we immigrated to America in 1989. My father and mom's decision to bring their kids to America for a new opportunity. America was the land of opportunity. Back in 1989-90, Pakistan, India had a lot of stuff going on. So my parents made the decision, let's raise our children in the United States. And I think it was an excellent decision. So it was no question whether any of us wanted to go to college. I have a younger brother. He went to college, went to Maryland also. My older sister ended up going to Syracuse in New York. And I had both of my siblings, both are college educated and have degrees. So I was deciding, what degree do I want to choose? What do I want to do? And I ended up picking mechanical engineering for a few reasons. Number one, I liked building Legos when I was younger. You know, those little Lego blocks you put together? I think I was just naturally gifted through genes and through family. I have an engineer mind. My mind is built for engineering. I just love engineering. I like putting things together. I like being hands-on, using my mind. I'm very creative. So early on, I would build these little castles. I was probably 5 or 6 years old, and I would build huge empire castles out of Legos. And I remember my brother and sister tried to build the same Legos, and they couldn't do the same type of job I did. I think they were both meant for something else. Their Legos would fall apart. Mine would be huge empires built, and they were so tightly constructed. I'd be able to read the designs, the blueprint designs, all the Lego stuff myself with nobody helping me. 4 or 5 years old, just building huge castles. I would follow the designs. I'd put the pieces meticulously together, and I would build them. I'd show my parents. My mom was such a huge advocate. She said, one day you're going to grow up to be an amazing engineer. And she probably could see that I was destined to do this. Some people are just more meant to do one thing or another. So you're raising your children and you notice they like building Legos, they're really good at singing, maybe they're physically very capable, they're going to become an athlete. So very early on, my parents identified that I might have a little knack for something. So naturally, I wanted to become an engineer. It wasn't like I was forced to do it. I really wanted to do it. So when I was graduating high school, I had to pick my career field, my degree. You had physics, you could go into communication, psychology, all great degrees. I ended up going for a STEM degree, STEM. So engineering was the field I picked. And specifically, I picked mechanical engineering instead of, let's say, fire protection or nuclear, because it was the most kind of well-rounded career at the time. Little did I know, mechanical engineers really are using AutoCAD back in 2010 up to 2020 AutoCAD. I think they have other stuff now like CATIA and things like that. But, mechanical engineering felt the best for me. It was more well-rounded. I was more all-verse type engineer. So I ended up getting accepted into UMBC, University of Maryland, Baltimore County, the first semester. And then I got accepted into Maryland College Park the second semester. I didn't want to waste my first semester. So I moved to Baltimore County. I lived on campus at UMBC. It was a fun time. I was only there one semester, but it was a great school. And I'm trying to remember the name of the dorm that I lived in. I can't remember, but it was close to something called the dining hall. It was right in front of us. And I think there's a dorm called Chesapeake or something like that. I had 2 friends who from high school actually went to UMBC, 2 or 3 of them. So it was nice to be there. Smaller campus. It's on a hilltop. It sits on a big hilltop. But I remember, taking my first classes as a freshman at UMBC. It was a great school. I was learning, kind of your elementary classes, calculus and stuff like that, physics. Really, I wanted to eventually transfer to College Park because their engineering school was much better. It was higher ranked. It was a bigger school, a little bit more opportunity there in College Park, closer to Washington, D.C. And also, my mother at the time was working in College Park at one of the hotels, the Best Western on Route 1. So it was cool that I had some family there. So I did my thing at UMBC. It was fun. I remember playing a lot of video games with some of my friends. We played Halo. I believe we had Call of Duty back then. I think so. But Halo was really big. Halo 1, 2, 3, 4. So I was kind of a big gamer in college. We would have our LAN parties in the dorm rooms. We had some parties. We would head down to Baltimore to go have fun, clubbing and stuff like that. I was a very social guy. I really got into my element in college. I became more social and fun when I was in college. I had to step out of my quiet side. I was very quiet and introverted in high school and middle school, and I was bullied in middle school too. And I completely condone any type of bullying. I think it's wrong. I don't think it should be even in our place in our school systems at all. But yeah, I was bullied early in middle school. I was very skinny, I was scrawny. Bigger kids would bully me. So I became very quiet and kind of suppressed. But in college is really where I started to hone my skills, not only as an engineer, but socially, having groups of friends, going out on the weekends. I learned to be more active and I used to talk more in person. So college is a little bit different now. I think people are kind of more glued to their phones and stuff. I'm pretty sure we didn't have Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok when I was in college back in 2008 to when did I graduate? 2014. So I don't think TikTok was out yet, and I don't think Facebook was out and it was just coming alive. before they switched it to a Meta. So there really wasn't too much social media presence when I was growing up in college. You really had to have a lot of face-to-face interaction. So I got really good at my social cues and picking up how to, socialize with people. And I kind of became popular after a while. I was a popular person because I would put together events and I would organize events. And I used to have these big parties in my apartments and I would have groups of people coming in. So I kind of learned the sales from valet, how to charge people at the door, $20, $25 for a party. It was pretty fun, but college was a great experience for me. So after UMBC, we used to go down to Baltimore Harbor and go check out the harbor. I think there was something called Cancun Cantina, something like that. It was like a fun little spot for people to have fun. We went down there. I had a great time. Eventually, I transferred to College Park, which was a completely different experience. I remember going on campus, and I'll never forget the second day I was there on orientation, I ran into the president. At the time, I believe it was Dr. Moat. Daniel Moat was the president. He was just passing out like cards or something, say, "Hey, welcome to Maryland." So it was so cool. I ran into the president of the whole campus there. It was such a great experience. I really loved the University of Maryland. I had such a great day. It's a second home to me. I love that campus. I've donated to the school. I highly recommend University of Maryland College Park. If you guys are wondering if you want to attend that school, reach out to me, DM me. I'll share with you some of my personal stories and some contacts I still have there. So I was in letters and sciences when I got in the school accepted, and then you have to get accepted again into your specific STEM program. Mine was engineering, so you had to apply, and I attended the A. James Clark School of Engineering, which was the engineering school founded by A. James Clark. And it was an excellent school. I think we were top 10 ranked public universities for engineering at the time. And I had a great experience there. It was tough. And yes, believe it or not, I failed a lot of classes. If you look back in time to the most successful people in the world, they've all failed many times. But like my other mentor, Les Brown, says, it's not a matter of times of how many you fall down, it's how many times you get up. And if you can look up, you can get up. So I failed multiple things. Chemistry, 135, I believe I failed that 2 or 3 times, but I got it right on the 3rd or 4th time. I think it was calculus, two or three, one of those. I think it was Calc 3, and perhaps my dynamics. It was either statistics or dynamics, or I think it was dynamics, vibrational dynamics. That was a tough class I took. I failed that twice, and eventually I got it right. But it's a very rigorous course. Engineering was tough. It was not an easy degree. Take calculus 1, 2, and 3. You had to take physics. This is the curriculum back in the day. Statistics, vibrations 1 and 2 was pretty tough. It's talking about the spring and damper system. You had to learn a lot of symbols. I actually still use a lot of engineering in my life now because I'm still an engineer and I love what I do. So, the courses I did use calculus. The engineering curriculum, I believe you are using it in some of your fields in your career if you go directly into those things. So I enjoyed it. I had a great time. Another thing, besides just attending class that I coach and I tell people all the time, don't just go to the classes and do the studying. If you really want to get the A+, go to the office hours, become friends with the professors, find out who they are, their connections. This is a pretty prestigious school, so how could you get a job like this if at Maryland teaching some of these courses? Some of these professors were well-known people, especially in the business school. So I would stay late. I would go to the office hours. I lived in McKeldin Library. That was my 3rd home. I had a small room there. I believe I reserved a locker. After class, I would go to Stamp Student Union. I would get some food. And what were the foods I was eating? Subway. I had chicken teriyaki sandwiches. I know Esselstyn and everyone is shaking their heads right now, but I didn't know what I knew now back then. If I was plant-based back then, perhaps I would have never had that heart attack, but it's too late. So all you can control is what can you do now and in the future. So going back, I had pizzas, chicken wings. There was a store called Ratsy's in College Park, and that was just the most disgusting chicken wings and pizza, but that's what everybody ate late at night. So I really had an awful diet in Maryland. I was not plant-based and whole food. I mean, I was really eating pizzas and sandwiches and chips, I mean, fries. But again, I was in 20 to 24. So I also used to ride a bicycle every day on campus. It was such a large campus. I would ride the bike, I'd take the bus, but I did a lot of biking, at least a few miles of biking per day. And I was working out a lot at the Maryland's gym and swimming, and I had fun. I was incredibly active in college. I mean, you were really going up and down that hill. So the classes are kind of spread apart. It was a very large campus. So I had to do a lot of running and walking. I mean, I must have been doing 5-10 miles a day and just biking to class, going to the gym, hanging out with friends. I had a beautiful life in Maryland. I lived in the dorms. My first dorm I lived in was Dorchester Hall. I lived in Dorchester. I believe I lived in either La Plata, Easton, Hagerstown. I lived in Knox Towers. I think there was something called the University Commons back then. I lived there. Many places, Terrapin Row. I lived at University View. There's a few other places. The Varsity, I believe, was a newer type of apartment complex. So I really lived in a lot of different dorms. I knew that area very well. I could, like the back of my hand. Route 1 wasn't what it used to be now. It was much smaller. There's only a few bars. Santa Fe was a huge bar we used to go to. Back in the day, I used to go out a lot. Let's just say that. And Terrapin Turf, and then you have Cornerstone. I don't know if that's still there. And I think Bentley's was another place. So weekends was filled with fun. I worked very hard, but I would go out on the weekends and enjoy my time. And I hear this all the time. You know, you need to grind for 10 years and grind. Enjoy your youth. You're not going to be 18, 19, 23, never again. It's a one-time deal. So I had the balance of working a lot and then on the weekends having a great time. And it's a nice balance. Life is short, and I don't believe in the grind so much that you don't have a second to hang out with your friends and family. That's not the life you want. Like my mentor, Ty Lopez, told me, you need health, wealth, love, and happiness. You need all 4 pillars. And a 5th one I would add is God, spiritual. You need to have some type of spiritual connection with God or something to help guide you. So, you know, you want all those pillars in life. And I believe I had them all, except for the wealth. I wasn't a wealthy man. Again, I was doing part-time valet, but the courses were great. My daily routine would be wake up, have a nice breakfast. What was I eating for breakfast? Omelets, eggs, cheese. You know, I didn't know what I knew now. So there was no big whole food, plant-based vegan diet back then. Vegan wasn't as cool as it is now. Now the internet and people are kind of pushing vegetarian, vegan lifestyle more. And hopefully there'll be better education that comes out, especially after my docuseries comes out. And but yeah, I was eating like your typical college kid, just trash. And no wonder my arteries and everything got clogged later on. But I also had a little bit of a genetic thing going on. So I would wake up, eat my breakfast, go to class the whole day. I had a packed schedule. I had engineering, statistics, back-to-back classes. When I was done at 4 or 5 o'clock, I would take a little break, and then I would end up just studying at McKeldin Library. I would go to Stamp Student Union. And then, like I said, on the weekends, I would be having a great time with my friends. So to pick up where I left off, I was talking about my daily routine. Wake up, go to class. After work, I would take a break, and then I would study more. On the weekends, I was hanging out with friends and doing my part-time job. So, you know, through my career, eventually I got my mechanical engineering degree in 2014, and I would the way that I got my first engineering job, a lot of people want to know how to get a job. I would go to the career fairs on campus, all the career fairs. They would have the university career fair. I would meet the recruiters. I would talk to them. That's how I came up with my first idea for Connects, this logo up here, my first software company I had. It was a high-speed networking tool that helped you store the date, time, and location of people when you met them, real-time interactions. And it would store it on a 2-factor authentication, so the other person would have to agree that, yes, I did meet you at that time. The whole purpose of the app was to help recruiters remember students, to remember where they met and discuss. And eventually that company blew up and became bigger, and then I sold it. That was the first tech company that I ever built. I had a very nice, large team of people. I'll do another video about actually what Connects was. But to go back to the first job, I went to something called the BEA conference. And that conference was for, I believe, Black Engineer Young Associate Society, something like that. And it was a STEM type hiring event. And at the time, the managers were there saying yes or no on the spot. Yes, you're hired. No, you're not. And I remember, I can't remember the name of the recruiter, but I was at the Robert H. Smith Business School in between the breaks of classes, and the recruiters were setting up in the hallways their booths to interview students. And I remember this one recruiter, I can't remember her name, might have been Tracy, but she was walking to the water fountain and she had a Northrop Grumman t-shirt recruiter on, and I was just in between classes. And I said, hey, do you have a booth set up here? She's like, oh, yes, we do. I was like, what time does your booth start? She's like, as soon as the next class is over in 20 minutes. I was like, okay, I'll come back in 20 minutes. And she looked at me and she said, you don't know me, but in 20 minutes, this place is going to be flooded with students. I won't get a chance to talk to you. She's like, do you have your resume now? And I did. And I believe a lot of success is being at the right place at the right time and being prepared. So I pulled out my resume. I said, take a look. I've worked these jobs. I've had customer service. I'm studying engineering. I didn't have an internship, but what I had was my charm, my attitude. I was at the right spot, and I would list my courses I was taking, engineering. She said, okay, well, what do you want to do? I said, I'm a mechanical engineer. I really would love to do an engineering type job, my first job. I graduated in a few months. I need a job, looking for that salary. And she said, great, well, Northrop, we're hiring. We've got the F-35 program that was awarded by Congress, $1 billion program. We're looking to hire engineers. And there's a conference coming up, the BEA conference in DC. All the managers will be there. You should attend. Absolutely. I registered. And then the next week I attended the BEA conference. I remember I was talking to someone. His name was Brian Mercier. I can't remember. It was one of his, I remember most of my managers' names. And I'm sitting there as him and another woman. I'm showing my resume. Again, very excited. My energy was just through the roof. I was like, so excited. I'm an engineer. Can't wait to get my life started. Like, blah, blah, blah. I love engineering. And Brian just kind of calmly looked at me and said, this guy's got a lot of energy. He's got a good personality. He'd be a great engineer. And he said, okay. Or would you be interested in relocating to California? I said, yeah, I don't care. Send me anywhere in the world. I'm ready to go. I'm about to graduate. It's May. I think I interviewed in April, and it was 1 month from graduating. I didn't have a job, so times were a little desperate. So absolutely, I'll take it. He goes, okay, great. He said, just go back to the lobby and just kind of wait around a little bit. We'll call you back in a few hours. So at that time, they were doing hiring on the spot. I don't know if people do that anymore. I wish they would go back to this. It was quicker. And I believe that F-35 program, they really desperately needed more engineers, young, smart engineers to join. So I went up in the lobby. I was at a hotel. I think it was the Marriott Hotel. I waited. I had a little bit of my lunch. And then Rhonda Davis, I think I remember her name. I think her name was Rhonda Davis from Northrop, recruiter back in 2014. She called me and said, congratulations, you're hired. Said, get out of here. Really? Yep, you're hired. They're going to send you an offer letter. You have to go through a background investigation. At the time, I had to have a secret clearance, but Northrop was offering this parallel interim secret where they ran. I believe the first secret clearance I had was through OPM, Office of Personal Management, or DOJ, and they had to get my background checked, everything obviously cleared. I remember at the time, my first job, that background investigation was a little quicker than normal, but I had to get my secret security clearance. And I remember I went back home. I told my family, I said, congratulations. I had 4, 5, 6 years of school and college. I landed my first job. I'll never forget, my salary for that job was $85,000 a year, 8500 per year as a manufacturing engineer at Northrop Grumman. That was my salary. That was my first job. I was very happy. I was this immigrant boy from Pakistan. I came to the United States, and finally I have my first job that I landed, and I was so happy. Family was happy. My dad, my mom were proud. Dad was a business owner. I interviewed my father actually on my show. You can look him up. And I was happy. I was ready to go. Little did I know, I wasn't sure where in California I was going. I didn't really research. I just thought California, LA. Nope. Little town called Palmdale in the middle of a desert. So I'll tell you what happened. I accepted the job letter. They ran the background. And I told my family, I believe I had a going away party. I said, goodbye, everybody. I'm moving to the West Coast and I'm moving to Cali. So I looked up Palmdale. I started researching houses for rent. I calculated my salary, my biweekly paychecks, 2,000 or 3,000 per week, maybe 2,500, and then how much am I going to have left over? But you have to remember, living in California is much more expensive than where I was. The gas prices were higher, food cost was higher, so I was trying to find a cheap place. And Palmdale was up in, if anyone's from California or knows where Palmdale is, it's really high up in the mountain areas. It's like way past the mountains. So you have Los Angeles near the shoreline. Then you have a town called Santa Clarita, which is in the middle, like in between the mountains. And then after that, you have Palmdale. So I made the decision to live in Santa Clarita. Looking back, probably living in LA would have been a better idea for me, but the drive was so long. And back in the day, I had that 2006 Infiniti G35 that I shipped from Maryland to California, and Northrop helped pay for the relocation expenses, which was part of the package to relocate from Washington, D.C. to California. Very expensive to move your whole life, and a little bit of stipend. So I ended up finding a house for rent in Santa Clarita after looking through. Honestly, looking back, I should have just found an apartment complex where I could meet other young students, because it was very isolated. That house it was like a room for rent for $500 or $700. I lived in this. I remember this room I used to live in. The landlord at the time, I believe she was retired, and her child she had some form of disability. So she was living off disability checks for both of them, and she would turn down the air conditioning and turn it off. I was down there in July. It was very hot. And I remember I used to turn up the AC and she would secretly turn it down. And I used to call my parents and be like, this house I live in, this landlord person just keeps turning down the AC. I can barely breathe. And at nighttime when I used to sleep, I used to open the window and scoop my bed back with the headboard and kind of stick my head out the window so I could feel the cold air. That was the life I was living, everybody. Waking up, sticking my head out the window so I could breathe to get some cold air at this house. I was paying $700 a month for rent. And I would wake up. What did I do? I did 25 to 50 push-ups. I was alone there in California. I didn't have any friends. I didn't have any family. I just moved there by myself. I had a friend at the time living there, but then he moved back right before I moved there. So I was totally alone. I had to rely on myself, my confidence, and my social skills that I learned in college to make friends as quick as I can as my first time career. So I'd wake up at 5 a.m. I would wake up. Sometimes 4:30. I would do 25 push-ups immediately when I woke up, took a shower, went downstairs, cooked breakfast. What did I have for breakfast? A huge cheese omelet. Full egg, no egg white, cheese. I'd put turkey, I think just turkey slices, a little bit of vegetables. I remember I used to call my mom, like, I'm having my huge breakfast. And then, guys, I would have a huge protein shake, casein, whey protein, 50 grams, a big scoop. I mean, I didn't know what I knew now in terms of food education. I just wanted the protein. I just wanted to bulk up. And I would drink Mass Gainer. I think in college I was fairly like 145, 150 pounds. And then when I got to California, I got up to 165, maybe 175. And I was very muscular. I was buff and muscular too. I was just gaining a lot of weight. Little did I know the amount of cholesterol and plaque buildup I had in my arteries. So I was gaining a lot. And then I'd wake up, and then at 5 o'clock, I'd get in my 2006 Infiniti G35. It was a 6-speed manual. Used to drive a manual, so much fun. Was an excellent driver. And I would drive through the mountain pass at 5 in the morning. And I'd have to be at work, I think at 6 or something like that. And I used to work these shifts called 410s or 510s or something like that. You would work 4 days, out of the week, 10 hours a day, and every Friday you would have off or something like that. So I was like, if I'm driving an hour, I might as well just work for as long as I can, 10 hours a day, 10 hours in a factory, in a manufacturing factory, on the factory floor. So I would drive, but while I drove for that hour and 30 minutes, I did not listen to music. I listened to Tony Robbins motivational stuff every morning. Tony Robbins, if you're listening to this, thank you. So I listened to Tony Robbins. A lot of famous people listen to him, Pitbull, etc. But in the morning, I would listen to Tony Robbins. I'd have him on my phone, played through my phone speakers, an hour and 30 minutes. And he would just go into, what do you want in your life? What do you desire? And I kept thinking like, man, I'm working at this job. I'm making 85. Like, what? I want to be great. I want to be bigger. Back in college, they used to bring these very famous CEOs. Kevin Plank used to come there. Brendan Uribe, founder of Oculus, co-founder, I met him. And Maryland, University of Maryland would bring these very famous CEOs to give a speech. And I wouldn't just sit in the audience. I would wait my turn and meet that CEO. I met Kevin Plank a few times, maybe 4 or 5 times, at an event called Cupid's Cup. I met Brendan Uribe at a bit camp at a hackathon. I used to attend these hackathons on the weekends to learn, to hone my skills in software engineering. And I just kept remembering these people, and I thought, they're no different than us. Bob Proctor used to tell me, never look up or down at anybody. We're all the same. And I kept remembering, like, how do these guys, these billionaire people, I was standing right in front of them in college. How did they get there? And I was listening to Tony Robbins every single day and night, for an hour and 30 minutes. And I'd put him in my headphones as I parked my car walking into work, and I'm listening to, success and wealth principles. So every morning, little did I know, I was reprogramming my mind for success and wealth. And I was building up. So I was 24 years old when I got my first job. I think this was 2014 or 2015, my manufacturing engineering job. I drive up, park my car in the parking lot. It was early. It was like 6 a.m. before the sun was even, I think the sun was just rising. It was still cold then in the morning. It was cool in the desert. It got really hot, like 120 degrees. It was a big manufacturing facility that Northrop Grumman had, and I believe Lockheed Skunk Works was nearby. And I'd get there, park my car, listen to my stuff, send a text to my parents. My mom said, I'm going to work, and she said, I'm very proud of you, keep it up. It was a 3-hour time difference. Put my badge on, I would walk to work, and I would see everyone else next to me on the left and right, everybody walking. Everyone, I was just like everybody else, walking to work at my regular corporate job. Everybody's badging in. There was 2 badge centers because it was a kind of a top secret facility. I'd get to work, and honestly, I was very grateful for that job. It was such a cool job. My first job as an engineer. I'm in $1 billion, basically hangar facility, and they are assembling the F-35 jets. Now, there's not so much I can disclose on what they were doing, the processes, etc., because it was a secret job. But that facility, they were assembling the F-35, the jets. And I remember, I don't want to get too much into the actual, what I was doing because it's a secret thing, but I was doing engineering type related work. And I remember specifically being on top of the F-35, the actual chassis, people were inspecting it. I mean, such an amazing facility and such an honor. Again, I don't want to get too much into what I was doing specifically because I had a secret clearance at the time, but it was a great experience. I would work, I'd get off work, and after work, I'd drive back to Santa Clarita. And on the Fridays or the Thursdays that I had off, I would drive past Santa Clarita into LA, into Santa Monica. Santa Monica was beautiful. I wish I lived in Santa Monica. I remember growing up, my dream was one day I want to have a house in Santa Monica and be able to go on the beach with my family. So I was so far away from my family and friends, I really got a little bit homesick. And usually once or twice a weekend, I would jump on my Spirit Airlines flight, because I didn't have a lot of money, book a red eye and fly across the country back home to see my family and friends. And it was an interesting time, but ultimately I really didn't like being isolated every day. I wasn't married, I was single at the time, working. I just felt a really longing. I just wanted to be closer to my mom and my dad and my family because, we're immigrants. We didn't really have anyone else here. So it was difficult. I had a group of friends, but the loneliness, the isolation really was eating me. And I just figured, why don't I just get a job on the East Coast back home? And I'm with my family and friends. Why am I doing this to myself? Living alone here. I had my birthday and I believe I had a friend visit me, and eventually at some point I loved the job, I loved the experience, but it was unnecessary for me to live alone in California by myself. I could just work at another company, and I did. So at some point, eventually, after a few months of working there, I was so tired of coming home to that little room, sticking my head out the window just for this lady who didn't want to turn the air conditioning on. So one day I just decided I can't do this anymore. There's got to be something else. And I left. I packed my car, we shipped it across, and I left, and I was happy. I was happy to leave. It was the right time. Sometimes people think, you should have stayed in the job, you should have stayed longer. I wasn't happy. And I give this advice to people. Life is short. If you're not happy, you just truly hate your job, you want to do something else, just leave. Leave and do something else, but do something else that'll replace your income. Don't just quit and just end up broke and back to square one. That's not what I did. I found another job before I left. So I love Northrop Grumman. It was an amazing manufacturing job, but I really was not happy living alone, sticking my head out the window because the woman wouldn't turn the AC on in the house I was living in. I really wasn't happy. I wanted to be home, and eventually I did go home. And that's more for the next video. Let's find out what happens next. So the next part, after I moved back home to the East Coast, I believe it was 2016, I ended up working for another electrical engineering company, more of a civil engineering company called MC Dean. It was an excellent company I worked for. And that's the time when I discovered Bob Proctor, my mentor. It was 2016. I'll never forget it. I released the phone call. I was sitting outside my job, and I was telling Bob at the time, I'm an engineer. I have this type of salary. I think it was 6-figure salary, but I want more. You always want more in life. And I remember Bob very clearly asking me, how much do you earn? What do you want to do in your life? And this phone call is released for you to watch. And I kept telling him, I want to do something greater than I love engineering, but I want to do something more. I want to be like you. I want to be like a coach. I want to help other people discover their dreams. So you can do that. Come to Toronto, come meet me, come to the Matrix program, 6-day program, and I'll show you exactly what to do with your life at the end of it. And it's released. I publicly released this phone call. And I was in my car at the time. I was talking to one of his coaches, Arash Vasugi, and he said, you ready to go? It's a $15,000 commitment. Let us know what you want to do. I didn't have 15 grand, but I took a lien against my 2006 Infiniti G35 and from the bank Mariner Finance, and thanks to Ashley Hungerford, I'll never forget you, Ashley, you loaned me the $15,000. I wired it to Bob Proctor Gallagher Institute, flew to Toronto, spent 6 days with Bob, and the experience was so life-changing. I'll never forget it. It was like a miracle. And through this whole studying and coaching with Bob Proctor, he helped turn my annual income into my monthly income through sales, through learning how to do multiple streams of income. It was such an incredible experience, but it was, that's the year, 2016 is when I met Bob, and that's when I decided to go after my company, Connects, and build that software app. And then I went back to college, went back to University of Maryland, and I studied my second degree in software engineering. All because I remember I went on Fiverr or Upwork or Freelancer, and I was trying to find someone to design the interface, the user interface for Connects, and to figure out, how do you get this thing loaded. I still have the platform right here on my phone. This Connects is such a cool tool to help store the date, time, location when you meet people. This was my dream. I thought this was going to be bigger than Facebook one day, and that designer was telling me it was like $2,000 or $3,000 just to design this front screen. It's just one screen with 3 buttons on it. It's like, it's going to be $2,000 or $3,000. I said, you know what? I'm going to learn this myself. So I went back to school, went back to Maryland. I studied software engineering. I learned website design, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. I learned C#, I learned programming, and then there you go. I learned software engineering. I didn't finish my degree in software engineering because I learned what I needed to learn. To make mobile apps, I took extra courses. I learned Xcode, I learned Swift, I learned Android Studio. And then another little hack, when I met my first co-founder, I started attending these hackathons on the weekends where you go and you sit with a bunch of students, 72 hours, you have to quickly build an app. So that's where I really learned hands-on software engineering and coding. That's how I learned to code. I was with coders coding apps with other students. It was so much fun. I went to BitCamp. That's where I met Brendan Uribe, the co-founder of Oculus. Very amazing people. And just, it was such a cool environment every weekend to go coding. So look what I did on the weekends, coding. I was working at my job, and on the weekends I would be coding. So I really pursued my dreams. I built my first, the company Connects. I had about 7 people, other software engineers working. And at the time, I had an old mentor of mine, Mr. Mark Ballard. Shout out to Mark Ballard. And I remember getting my first job at NASA because of Dr. Biggio, the old engineering professor had. Dr. Biggio, shout out to you. What happened was I took Lean Six Sigma engineering, and I got my green belt in Lean Six Sigma, just like the color of my shirt. I had my green belt. And part of the program, you get to pick if you wanted to work at Black & Decker, if you wanted to do a job at some other companies. I wanted the job at NASA Goddard Space Center down there in Greenbelt. So when I was senior, junior, I did my Lean Six Sigma project at Goddard, and I met Mark Ballard, who was the Lean Six Sigma instructor. I stayed in touch with him. Remember what I told you, connections and resources is everything. So I stayed in touch with that person. And then as I started doing my software engineering degree, I wanted to get a software engineering job. And I remember messaging Mark and having a dinner with him. And then just perfect timing. I ended up working at a company called Ares. It's a contractor. Most people at NASA are contractors, and some people are government employees. So I was a contractor working at Goddard as a Python software engineer. I believe I was in optics code building 551 one of the time. I think it was in 2017, I can't remember. And I had a public trust clearance. I used to drive. It was such a cool honor to have that job actually at NASA, working on site. I was helping design front-end UX interfaces at NASA for the labs. Such a great job. My stack was Python, the Django, and I think it was JavaScript or something. It was a lot of coding I was doing, and it was fun. I liked it. I liked coding. I had a great time coding. I really enjoyed the coding experience. It was cool to learn a new skill. Go out there, learn new skills. Learn if you can. Whatever you can do for free, learn it. Go online, go on YouTube, take a course, learn through LinkedIn, learn how to code. It was really important what I learned, and I was able to translate that into a salary. I took that salary from my NASA job and I split it 7 ways. I split it to my 7 developers, and we developed a system. We had the back end, I believe we built it in Google and Firebase, and then we used AWS, we used Azure. We ended up going with Firebase. It was just a faster way to integrate stuff. The front end, I believe, was built natively in Xcode. Eventually, we built it in React and React Native. It just came out. So we built that. So I'm hands-on software engineer, similar to Elon. He's in there. He's actually building it. I'm coding. I'm in the meetings. I remember, I tell this story all the time. I'd be at work 9 o'clock, 9 in the morning. I'm at work. I'm at my job. I'm working at my job. I'm not doing other stuff related to Connects. I was working 9 to 5. At 5:01 p.m., I'm in my car on the phone with my co-founder, telling him I'll be in the meeting in 20 minutes. So I drive from Goddard back to my apartment at Terrapin Row. At 5:30 p.m., I'm in the meeting with my entire software team, 7 people. And from 5:30 p.m. to 2 in the morning, I'm building Connects. I'm building my startup company. I'm going for my dreams. I have the job funding my business. For those people saying, go after your dreams business, quit your job, Don't quit your job. Use the money from your job to fund your business. That's what I recommend personally. And I've done everything from having a job, running a business, not having a job and a business, not having a business and not having a job at all. That was terrible because I didn't have any money. And I think the best method is having a full-time job, any type of job, even a regular job or a corporate job, to fund your business. And once you make 2 to 3 times your salary from your business to your salary, that's probably a good time to make the jump, only when you feel like it's right. And you can reach out to me or my team and we can help guide you. So I took my NASA salary, I paid my team, and we built that app, Connects. And man, I had such a cool experience just running a software company. It was so cool. Here's the app right here. And I would be going to pitch competitions. I went to the Piranha Tank. I did all these other type of shows. I used to fly to Vegas. I used to pitch investors. I mean, I was running this company from 25, 26 up until I think 30, 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe a few years, 4 or 5 years. A lot of mistakes, a lot of failures, a lot of lessons learned. Top lessons I learned is hire fast and hire slow and fire quickly, hire fast. So what I would do is I would have a lot of interviews. We'd quickly screen people. We would take our time to hire. And then if I found someone that was bad, we would fire them quickly because it's like a rotten apple at a company. They kind of just infect the whole company. So I had 7 people at the time, engineers working. I had a CFO. I had a COO. I had many offices. I had an office down next to the White House in front of DC. I think it was like a partnership with Verizon. And then I had a few WeWork offices. I mean, I must have had at least 20 or 30 offices at the time. Engineers were there. I would be doing events. So I really was running the life of a startup entrepreneur, a tech entrepreneur in my 20s. It was such a great experience. But the failures, just mismanagement of funds, leadership. I also didn't know what I was doing. It's not like I was being coached by Mark Zuckerberg how to run a software social media company. So looking back in hindsight, if I had better mentors in the tech field, business, if I knew what I knew now, I probably would have been much more successful at that company. We ended up kind of selling it, not for the amount that I really wanted, but I had to pivot. I eventually was running out of money. I was bleeding cash, and I was worn out. I was a worn out tech entrepreneur. I just couldn't handle it anymore. I mean, years and years, and I really wasn't making a lot of money. A lot of these companies, Facebook and Twitter, they really didn't make any money at all in the first few years. So you need a large amount of money, capital, to really make it. So a lot of mistakes I made, but I'm so grateful for the experience. I learned software engineering. Eventually, I took that company and I pivoted into my next company, which was real estate, which we'll talk about next. Welcome back. So after the success of my first tech company, I went into a different thing. I went into this real estate type deal that my mother introduced me at the time. She got involved in kind of these rental houses that we started doing. And that's where I learned real estate, was directly from my mom. She was in hospitality management, worked at the Best Western, Clarion Inn. She had multiple degrees in hospitality. She had really great at sales. I remember sitting in her office and she was talking about sales, and she used to go on sales conference calls to book the rooms for the hotel. So I learned direct sales marketing from my beautiful mother, Fazia, who's also in my videos. She passed away due to a terrible heart attack, which also inspired me to go into the health field that I'm in now. So, I got involved in the real estate game. I acquired some properties, short-term rentals, stuff like that. And then I would take the cash flow to fund my other businesses. I still do real estate. Real estate is a really great asset class to build long-term wealth. I think real estate is a game changer, and I highly recommend getting involved in it. I looked into becoming a realtor, commercial broker, property manager. So it was a really interesting, good period of my life. I still do it in the game. And that's kind of what led me into the health field. I had maybe 20 or 30 properties. I can't remember, just a lot of properties. And it was stressful. It was very stressful. I mean, fixing toilets, managing with tenants, it was tough. It was really tough doing this business with a few partners. And just I wasn't taking care of my health. I nearly killed myself running this business. I would be eating terrible foods, microwave dinners, just the worst food, cholesterol, fat buildup. And eventually I had that heart attack in January in 2024, and it nearly killed me. Got the stent placed in my heart. Dr. Friedman saved my life from Shady Grove Hospital. And I'm very grateful that I'm still here. I'm still living. But that's what inspired me to do my next two companies, which is a healthcare focused biotech company designing that arterial IQ, the new watch that I have that's going to measure the plaque buildup in your arteries. It's going to be revolutionary. And then the second company I'm doing is kind of film and TV production, media production, to document and film everything I'm doing. And we're in the middle of filming our 5-part docuseries on health and how to stay alive. And now I'm fully vegan, plant-based diet. And I'm a huge advocate for this movement. It's a revolution on the health, wealth, love, happiness that Ty Lopez, my mentor, talks about. But more importantly, the health is probably the most important thing to me right now. Health is wealth. Survived a heart attack. I've survived business failures, but without the health, you can't keep going. So now I have a new direction in life. I'm really at the foundation focused on health. Staying healthy, eating the right foods, and if you're healthy, you can produce more wealth. So right now I'm focused on health, diet, promoting the lifestyle. Hopefully one day I think I'll launch my own restaurant franchise brand. I think it's going to be called Plant. I'm looking for partners and for people to work on this with. A fully vegan, plant-based type restaurant, no oil, no fats, no butter, no oil, no olive oil. Very controversial, the olive oil, but I talk about that in my interviews with Dr. Esselstyn and Dr. Barnard. And, a new type of lifestyle. Currently, there's not really many restaurants I can go to eat that don't have oil. Most of the cooks and the chefs are cooking in olive oil. So it's almost like you can't get away from it unless you go to some nice companies, restaurants like Chopped or Sweet Green. I love those places. I'm not a paid marketer for them, but I like eating there because you can clearly see they're putting the salad with rice. It's not a lot of oil. And I just always tell them, don't put oil on any of my food. Dr. Esselstyn talks about that. And Dr. Barnard also talks about the oils and, what can happen to your body. So fully plant-based vegan. I'm very healthy. Soon we're going to come out with some of the reports. I'll be publishing some papers, some long-term papers on medical white papers on plant-based living. Since I'm doing such a great job at documenting it, I have all the data. I have the blood reports. I have the angiograms. We're designing the watch that's coming out that's going to help you measure the plaque buildup. So a lot of great things to look for. Keep watching my channel. Stay tuned, and much more to come. Thanks, guys.